Hi everyone, so we are looking at the day 8 notes, being able to identify zeros of a quadratic function and use the zeros to sketch a graph. So the first thing I would like for you to think about are the two questions at the top. So if you had 5 times x equals 0, and you also had y times negative 3 equals 0, what must y equal to and what must x equal to? So 5 times what will get you 0? So you should say that 5 times 0 is equal to 0. And then what times negative 3 would get you 0? Well, that would be y is equal to 0. Okay. And from this, we're actually going to do a couple questions, and this is actually being able to apply the zero product property. And the zero product property is simply stating that a product of factors is 0. So is 0, and that's if one of the factors is 0, one or more of the factors. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is, in order to help us to solve our equations, we're going to set each of our factors equal to 0. Okay, so set each factor equal to 0. And you're going to solve. So your first factor, here you go, is x minus 4. So set that equal to 0 and solve. So you're going to get x is equal to 4. And the second factor, go ahead and set that equal to 0 and solve. X is equal to negative 3. So you have two answers, two solutions to your question. And this is going to help us, and that same idea is going to help us when we are going to be graphing. Okay, so let's just get the couple questions as practice before we move on to graphing. Okay, so if you look at number 4, let's take our first factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. So x is equal to negative 2. And if we do the second factor, so x minus 1 is equal to 0. So you should have gotten x is equal to 1. Okay. Now, this number 5, if you can go ahead and do. Okay, and let's look at 6 and 7. They got a couple different types of examples. So now you should see, well, you don't have a parenthesis. It doesn't look like number 3 or number 4, but that's okay, right? This is still a factor. So 6x is equal to 0. So if you remember, divide by 6, right? This is not undefined or no solution. 0 divided by 6 is just 0. And if we go ahead and the second parenthesis, x minus 4 is equal to 0, x is equal to 4. Okay. So same thing for number 7. Okay. Even though we do not have parenthesis in the first factor, which is okay. So set negative 8 is equal to 0, divide by negative 8, x is equal to 0. It is not equal to negative 8. And the second factor here, x plus 2 equals 0, x is equal to negative 2. All right, so if you can go ahead and try number 8. Okay. Now we're going to take that same idea to help us to graph. Okay. Now, when we are graphing, you are going to be given an expression for this question. You're going to be given an expression that's already factored, right? This is factored form. We did the practice the last couple days over how to identify factors and how to actually factor. So now I'm giving you an expression that's in factored form. Okay, so being able to find our x-intercepts when they are in factored form is just like using the zero product property. Okay, so what we do is we're going to take, just like we did in the previous examples, to help us to find our x-intercepts, we're just going to take each factor and set it equal to 0. So x is equal to 1, and x minus 5, x is equal to 5. Okay. So set each factor equal to 0 and solve. And remember that when you write an x-intercept, you are writing your answer as a point. Because remember, an x-intercept on a graph, it's a point. It's a coordinate point. So my answers for my x-intercepts, I'm going to have 1, 0, and then 5, 0. These are where your graph's going to cross your x-axis. Okay. Now, the second step for B is telling us to go ahead and graph and plot those x-intercepts on the graph. So 1, 0, so 1, 0, and 5, 0. It should be on the x-axis. Okay. All right. The next step for C is having us to find the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate of your vertex. Now, if you remember what a vertex is, remember it's either the highest point or the lowest point on your graph. So this is being able to find the vertex. So halfway between our x-intercepts. So we're going to add our x-intercepts and then divide them by 2. Okay. So my x-intercept was 1 plus 5. Divide that by 2. So 6 over 2 is 3. Finding the y-coordinate is being able to substitute that 3 into my original equation. So y is equal to, substitute 3 for x, and then 3 for x. So you're going to get 2, and then negative 2. So y is going to equal negative 4. So that vertex, here's your x-coordinate, here's your y-coordinate, it's your point, 3, negative 4. So on your graph, 3, and then negative 4. And then we can draw our parabola. Remember, it's like a U shape. Okay. Vertex in this case is the minimum, right? The minimum is the lowest point. Okay, number 10. Same thing. We're going to look at being able to find our x-intercepts. So setting each factor equal to 0. So set this factor equal to 0. Divide by 2, right? 0 divided by 2 is just 0. The second factor, set it equal to 0. X is equal to 4. And remember, we want to write our x-intercepts in as a point. So here you have 0, 0, and here you have 4, 0. So you have 0, 0 right at the origin, and then 4, 0, so right on the x-axis. Then we are going to be able to find our vertex here. So halfway between our x-intercepts. So my x-intercept was 0, the other one was 4, halfway between, add them up, divided by 2. So you get 4 over 2, which is 2. So there's the x-coordinate. And to find the y-coordinate, we got to substitute that 2 into your x's in your original. So 2 times 2, and then 2 minus 4. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So y is equal to negative 8. This is a point. So your x and y is 2, negative 8. That's your point, that's your vertex. So 2, and then down 8. Giving you parabola. Again, your vertex in this case is going to be a minimum. It's the lowest point. All right, so there are 2 questions for you to try, number 11 and number 12, and then go ahead and submit these into Schoology.